Hello ladies and gentlemen, Gavesty here. This is the Heroic Quick Raid Guide for Iron Juggernaut. And if you want any of the other videos for this encounter, you can click on the annotations at the bottom of your screen. So let's do this thing. So there are two new mechanics on Heroic, the first of which is called Ricochet, and this will only occur during the normal assault mode. This causes the blade that's spinning in the left arm of Juggernaut to be launched into the ground and spin along the ground toward two random raid members. It prefers ranged targets, and it will travel in a straight line toward the first target's location. After it reaches that location, it will travel in a curved path, if necessary, to reach the second target, after which point it goes back to the boss and is held there until it's fired once again. So there you can see the blade spinning out kind of to my right, and then it goes toward the first target, then to the second, and then back to the boss. Generally speaking, the best way we found to handle this was to spread out your ranged players, and when the Ricochet fires, to have everyone sidestep 5 yards or so, because the blade targets your location that you were standing when it fired, essentially, when it's shot toward your location. So you can usually, but not always, dodge the actual blade by moving a few yards when it is moving along. It goes very quickly, however, so you need to be very careful of it. But other than that, you can easily avoid most of the damage from this new mechanic. Everything else on the normal assault phase is exact same mechanically as it is on normal. So, once you get the blade management down, everything else should fall into place pretty quickly. Now, on Heroic, the second new ability is Mortar Barrage, and this will occur, as you might guess, during the second phase, the Siege mode. So if you look in the distance of the footage here, you can start to see the red barrage circles that are landing all around the room during this mode. And this is the Mortar Barrage. Essentially, Juggernaut will chain fire tons of these barrages at random locations within about 50 or 60 yards of his current location at the time. And anyone that gets hit, of course, takes massive damage. So there's a couple ways to deal with this mechanic, and we'll talk about those in the strategy section that's coming up. But essentially, this is the new mechanic on this mode of the fight. So if you can handle this, then as with the other mode, everything else is the same as it is on normal. So mechanically, you should be used to the rest of the mechanics. I'm going to say mechanics again because it's a good word. All right, so let's talk about strategy. Now, there are two ways to handle the second phase, the siege phase on this fight. And the first of which I would call the manly method. This is something that we don't do here in the video because we didn't have reason to do so, and it's much more difficult, and we're wussy. But basically the way that this would work is to treat this fight in the second phase just like you would on normal, and that is to stay in range of the boss, dodge all the Mortar Barrage casts while dealing with the other mechanics, and therefore this allows you to deal damage during the siege mode phase, just like you normally would. However, because you're in range of all the Mortar Barrages, by being within 50 or 60 yards, this means it's a lot more difficult to avoid those attacks and stay alive. It's worth noting that Barrage does, in addition to having a max range, it does obey line of sight. So if you stand behind a fence, for example, over there, the barrage will not hit you, so you can somewhat use this to your advantage by, for example, having healers behind the fences at a line of sight, and your ranged DPS can inch out and get in line of sight of the boss to attack him a bit, and then come back in if there's a barrage or whatnot. But that would be quite a feat and something that would probably be difficult to mess with. So again, we don't use this particular strategy. As you can see here, we're not within range at all during this phase. Because we are afraid and didn't need to. Now the second strategy for siege mode, which is the one we're using here, is what I would call the Wuss method. And this essentially means that you do the entire siege mode phase without attacking the boss at all, and are therefore out of range of all the barrage attacks the entire time. So you can see here that we get knocked back into this corner when the phase initially starts. After the first shock pulse, and then we just remain back here. With the boss so far away, Barrage is never a threat to us, and once the phase is over, then we can just move him back into his normal position kind of where our markers here are. So this method, the benefit, of course, is that you don't have to dodge Barrage, so mechanically everything is the same as the normal difficulty. The downside, of course, is that you need a lot more DPS overall to meet the Berserk timer, because you won't have that minute or so of the siege mode to attack the boss. So to do this method, we stand to the sides until he's about done with Explosive Tar, then we stack up in melee range. Here at the green marker you can see it. Use some cooldowns of some kind for the first shock pulse, and then get knocked back. Once we're back here, then basically it's a matter of healing everyone up quickly, and then dealing with the laser and the crawler mines. You also want to make sure you're using a cooldown of some kind for every shock pulse during this phase, because they do a lot of damage on heroic. So we basically try to use 2 cooldowns, either personal or raid cooldowns, for every shock pulse, because we have enough of them, and they'll be up for the next time this phase occurs. Other than that, you just hang out here, manage the laser properly, do the mines after shock pulse occurs on the second round, and then once the third shock pulse is over, you can go back into range and continue on the boss. The last thing to consider is how you handle crawler mines. And obviously, mechanically, this is the same as it is on normal, but mines do a lot more damage, and they have to be handled properly. So the best way we found to do this was to have one tank, whichever tank is not on the boss at the time, get at least one of the mines, with another player getting the other 2. You can obviously have one player get one individual mine each set, but this is a lot more complicated. So in our case, we found that our Balanced Druid in bear form had enough hit points that she could, with a minor cooldown if necessary, soak up 2 of every set of mines, so that then the third was then picked up by the off-tank, and none of the other raid members had to really worry about them. The exception is during the siege phase here, where people are often spread out more, there's lasers and whatnot, where the rest of the raid can help out with cooldowns to get the mines from there. But if you have the ability to have 1 or 2 individuals essentially handle all the mines, this will greatly reduce the complexity of handling those and help you out in getting this down. So that pretty much covers everything, I think. Overall, it's not a very difficult fight mechanically. There's a lot of healing and DPS requirement involved when you're first learning this fight, so just be aware of that. Particularly against tanks, your tanks are going to take a lot more damage than you might be used to in other encounters that you've seen, even on heroic. So make sure your healers are aware of that. We're using 3 healers in this, and we just barely meet the DPS requirement, killing him a couple seconds after Berserk on our first kill. But that was sufficient, obviously, and then subsequent weeks where gear gets better, things will be easier from there. So just as needed for your own raid's makeup, and you should be good to go. That is the quick raid guide for Iron Juggernaut on heroic. As always, good luck, thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed, please subscribe.